Since its launch last week, two camps have emerged, one pushing for its amendment and the other for its retention as it is. The latter finishing a series of meetings in Naivasha where President Uhuru Kenyatta and ODM leader Raila Odinga attended. Tonight we ask, will the report bridge the differences? Good evening, this is Pundits Night. I'm Abu Bakr Abdullahi. Keep talking to us. Your voice matters, your opinion counts. The hashtag to use is Pundits Night. Send us a message on 22047. Guests tonight, just a reminder, Caleb Kostani is soil lawmaker. Herman Manyora is our resident analyst. Kimani Wamatangi, the Kiambu senator, was supposed to be part of this show, but unfortunately will not be. James Mamboleo replaces him, a constitutional lawyer. Gentlemen, good evening and thank you all for making time for us tonight.
Good evening, Abu Bakr.
Thank you.
Good evening, Abu Bakr.
All right, Caleb Kostani, let me start with you. Were you among the lawmakers who are in Naivasha today to discuss the recommendations of the Building Bridges initiative?
Well, thank you, Abu Bakr, and good evening to the other panelists. I was not in Naivasha today because I never received any invite. And when we asked the leader of majority who was sending out the invitation, that is Honorable Amos Kimunya, he said that because of COVID, they were going to have the invitations or the meeting in Naivasha would be in 2 batches. And we understood that and we took him for his word. But going by what the press conference that was held in the presence of President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, it seems there is going to be no other meeting. So I think leader of majority lied to us as members of parliament. I could see through his statement, he was quoted in the Standard, I don't know how true, and he said that the invitation was extended to those who are aligned to BBI and were basically saying yes without asking any questions. All
right, Caleb, the leader of the majority in the National Assembly says, and I quote, that this is a consultative meeting meant to fine-tune the recommendations of the BBI task force. He continues to say that we extended the invite to all the 416 MPs in both the Senate and the National Assembly. Are you disputing what the leader of the majority in the National House is telling the media?
Oh yes, I am disputing, and you can ask him. I will prove him wrong because we normally get messages from the leader of majority's office, and I can tell you it was sent to the selected few.
You say selected few. What, in your view, was the criteria of selecting those views?
Well, the criteria of selecting those views are those who have given in to the intimidation and coercion that is going on, and those, of course, who are basically yes people. They will not ask any questions simply because they feel that they don't want to disappoint the drivers of BBI. And it's actually sad that you have such people who have been elected and yet they cannot speak on behalf of their people. They are now becoming like robots. So I think some of us were left out because we have taken a stand. We have given our opinions. Nobody wants to listen to us. And the president himself, Abu Bakr, at Bomas of Kenya, after the DP spoke and when the president was speaking, he says we want to build a consensus. What happened today in Naivasha is nothing close to a consensus from the way I understand consensus to be.
All right, so that we move to the other panelists, just to finish on this series of questions on the invitation and the attendance. You say we gave our stand. There are those who say your stand is a rejection to the report, hence you shouldn't be invited.
Well, I don't know why a divergent opinion should be rejected, because if the word inclusivity means what I know it means, then you should have invited all parties and had a discussion. Listen to us the way they listen to the Deputy President and Bomas of Kenya, so that we give our views. The document we are preparing is for the Kenyan nation. I will not be left out if, and God forbid, BBI goes through. I will not be left out because I said no or because I didn't contribute to it, because I'm a Kenyan, and it is a document that is being prepared to serve me. Remember, Abu Bakr, this current constitution, I voted no. And we were with the Deputy President, the late President Moy, and many of us voted no, about 3-point-something million who rejected this constitution. But here we are now. I'm a member of parliament in this constitution. William Ruto is the deputy president, and many others are in different positions. So it's a document that will serve us, whether we vote for it or not, and if it passes, it will serve us as Kenyans. So I think we need to relook at, drop down this attitude of it must go the way it is. Yeah, you didn't give your views when you
Mheshimiwa, let me interject you at that point. We will get to the specifics of the recommendations of this report a little bit later in this discussion. But let me bring in the other panelists as well. Herman, given that there is a section in the political class that feels as though they have not been invited, they have not been part of this process, will this document bridge the divide then?
Good evening, Abu Bakr, and congratulations for your launch of TV47 at the coastal town of Mombasa. First, I think there is sense in what Caleb is saying, in the sense that there are many good things in the BBI report. Equally, there are others that may not be very good that need to be changed. Secondly, there is need for consensus. But third, the people behind this document may think, just how many times will you open up that document? Just how many times will you open? Because even if you open up for consensus building and you come up with a document, you can bet there will be people who will say there are things they want to change. For how long will you do that? Secondly, before we come to your question, there's also the question of how sincere is Caleb and his team? See, so certainly, now to answer your question, you will be expecting too much if you expect that the entire country will agree with BBI, however rosy it would be. And certainly, if it's about BBI from the 9th of March as a handshake was an earth-shaking thing. Something of this proportion, something this big, surely will unsettle some people. And indeed, it did unsettle Caleb and his team, because they were assured of the president in 2022. Then 9th of March happened. So you cannot expect BBI to be supported by everybody in the country. Certainly not all the political players. There will be those who, for maybe even good reasons, will not support it. And it will not be that the document or the report is not good. It will just be the politics of it, and the BBI is politics. And as usual with the politics, you cannot get all the people to agree on something, and especially something as big as BBI.
All right, Herman, and if the very name of this initiative is Building Bridges Initiative, which somehow would mean bringing everyone either on one side or to the side that this document says will be progressive for this country, it seems as though then there are lead stakeholders, lead players in the political arena who will remain on one side of this bridge, and there are some who will be on another side.
Obvious in life, when a bridge is constructed, sometimes you have to destroy one to build a bigger one. A seed has to die for life to spring. Certainly, there will be people who will be left the other side. That will not surprise me. It doesn't mean people have been left out because they are bad people. It simply means, like I've said before, that this is a big thing. It intends to perhaps unite the country, address the bigger issues that affect this country. But even then, as much as it is trying to address the big things that affect this country, there will be those who, for political considerations, would not support it. And on their own, will choose to remain on the other side of the bridge as the others cross.
Fair enough, Herman.
Maybe they will extend the hand to bring them on board, but they could refuse.
All right, Herman, let me bring James to the discussion. James.
And then deal with my echo, please.
All right, James, in 2010, Kenya promulgated a constitution that still is termed as a progressive document. Is there a genuine need to relook into this document first, rather than political needs?
Yes, there is definitely a number of schools of thought on the question whether it is necessary at this point in time to relook at the 2010 document. Of course, on the one side, there are a number of people who believe that this constitution is fairly young. Just 10 years later, they claim all that needs to be done is to continue implementing this constitution, look for every aspect of it that have not been properly implemented and implement it to the latter, so that at this point in time, there definitely cannot be a question of amending this constitution. But of course, there are also the other school of thought that says 10 years through the rough and tumble of the implementation of this constitution. Are you getting me?
Go ahead, James.
Yes, there are those who say that 10 years of implementation of this constitution have given Kenyans sufficient opportunity for them to look at some of those aspects of the constitution that aren't working so well, and so therefore we can't get stuck in the old philosophy that constitutions do not get amended as quickly as this one, and so therefore we should just get into the business of looking at what's wrong with some aspects of this constitution, and we should amend it. Personally, I come from the school of thought that a document such as the constitution is a social contract that Kenyans have given themselves for the purposes of governing their affairs. And at this point, if Kenyans feel, genuinely speaking, that there are aspects of this constitution which would do better through some amendment, then so be it. I want to cite a few examples. The first one, which comes to my mind immediately, is the question of the way county governments have been working. I have looked at the problems we have had, especially with the appointment or lack of it of county governors, and I can see immediately, of course, that the question requires some amendment in the constitution to clarify what happens when the seat or the position of deputy governor falls vacant. I can also cite the example of the question of devolution. For so long, governors have been crying that they do not get as many or as much resources in the counties to deal with the functions of devolution that have been given to them, and that one of the ways this could be ameliorated is by adding them more resources. And I can see it in this proposal in the constitution that we raise the floor from 15% of the audited accounts of the country to 35%. But then there is also the big issue which I would not fail to mention, which is the question of dealing with the political problem that happens every cycle of elections.
James, let me interject you at that point. We will come to the specifics, and there are quite a number of issues that we will be discussing on this show. You talk about the implementation of the Constitution and the amendment to the Constitution as well. Just for purposes of clarity, these are things that can be separate, isn't it? The implementation of the Constitution does not always require that you amend it. Is it so, just for purposes of clarity?
The implementation of the Constitution does not necessarily require that you amend it, but in some cases, through the process of implementation, if you find that there are a lot of problems the Constitution is facing in realizing the objective for which some of those provisions were put in the Constitution, then as of necessity, I don't see why you cannot amend it so as to give the Constitution full effect. Because ultimately, we have seen that some provisions of the Constitution are eating at each other, and so creating absurdities, creating all manner of obstacles to the implementation of the Constitution. And in such cases, constitutional scholars and constitutional practitioners would rather that clarifications are made through an amendment of the Constitution.
Fair enough, James. Let me get back to Caleb Kostani. Caleb, while speaking in Tharaka Nithi, the Deputy President said, and I quote, that we are saying that if this document remains only about expanding the executive, we should stop this reggae. This was on Sunday during a a charm offensive in Tharaka Nithi. We shall stop this reggae will to some mean as though it's a direct opposition to any question that will seek to pass amendments on the constitution through the BBI report.
Well, Abubakar, I don't speak for the Deputy President, but I would like to say that when we were at the meeting that was at Bomas, I wasn't there, as I've said, I was also not invited for that one. The President gave an assurance to the nation that we shall have room for consensus. And that is where we are coming from, and we are saying we need to discuss this document further and look at main issues that we feel were left out. And let me say this, because I'm in agreement with the Deputy President that the main objective of this BBI was to create 5 positions for the big boys. And that is exactly what it is. All these other things that you are seeing created there, 35% to the counties and all these, are just sugarcoating in order to escort the main thing. So we need to separate. We need to separate matters that are administrative in BBI and let them be sorted out. We need to isolate matters that are legislative, bring the bills to Parliament. We will debate them. We will pass them. And now let us isolate and see what does the referendum, what requires a referendum. Are we ready to spend 14 billion shillings, as IEBC gave their quote of 13.9 billion to run this referendum, to create 5 positions when we cannot, rather than advancing the Big 4 agenda, which would have created over 300,000 jobs for our youth. So really we need to discuss, we cannot discuss BBI, Abubakar, in isolation of the economic status of the country. We need to discuss them both, and so that we need to be honest with each other.
But
we
it's
are
more
doing
than the
very poorly economically. We cannot afford to have a referendum, a divisive referendum. And as the DP said earlier today, and I agree with him, there are people who are pushing because they want a yes and no side. They want an us versus them, so that they know that once the government rolls in machinery, you roll in machinery with finances. And they will have finances. They don't care what happens to the economy of the country, so long as they have put money in their pockets. But they will be okay. But that is not the right thing to do.
Caleb, this report is more than just creating positions, and you have a right to say that if that's how you view it. It talks about the counties, talks about the gender, talks about the judiciary, talks about the youth. It talks about host of issues. It seems as though you are selective on these powers.
You see, Abubakar, this document, and listen to me carefully, I have said it is about creating positions. All the others that you see there are sugarcoating. But the main issue, and we held this position, and we still hold that position, that the main issue was to expand the executive. That was the main issue. All these other things are sugarcoating. I mean, you do not need a referendum to give the 35% to the counties, which is also not possible, unless you are giving 35% to the counties and giving them, seeding it with responsibilities. Either you pay the police in your county or you pay your teachers. So really, let us not lie to Kenyans that it is the Kenyan economy can afford to give 35% to the counties and the national government still runs with all the other responsibilities. You will be able to give 35% and you will give it with responsibility. So really, counties will not be gaining. We gave a proposal because we are a farming nation. 80% of Kenyans live out there in the farms. Even if they do live in the urban areas, they have farms, little farms and big farms, wherever they are. We said we need a guaranteed minimum return, GMR, of 5% of the total revenue collected in every financial year, so that to cushion coffee farmers, tea farmers, maize farmers,
and when you say we, you make reference to?
You remember the group that we have been branded Tanga Tanga. We had a meeting of about 120, 130 MPs in Naivasha. And those were the suggestions we gave. Because if we cannot guarantee the farmer in this country, then we are not able to move forward as a country. We are not able to spur growth in the farming industry. We are not able to give our farmers good prices. And we cannot leave our farmers at the mercy of the determinant for the prices to be the market.
Fair enough. Let me get back to James. James, Caleb talks about the question of expanding executive. In his 28 minutes address to the nation last week, the president talks about inclusivity, which he said is great. The expansion of this executive will see the creation of the Premier's office, who is picked by the President, from MPs in the majority party in the National Assembly, and also the creation of the official opposition and mixed cabinet drawn from both Parliament and technocrats, which begs the question, understanding the wage bill and the question of over-representation and under-representation in some quarters, is there a need to expand the executive, create more seats?
Bakar, first and foremost, I want to ensure that Kenyans tonight do not get to accept the blatant lies that are being peddled by my friend Caleb on the other side. First and foremost, Caleb, every election since 1992 takes the following cycle. Just before the election, a lot of tension. During the election, a lot of fear. After the election, serious violence. Okay? If you look at the money that some of the operatives in government steal from the coffers of this country, you would be shocked at the idea that someone is claiming that expanding the executive to include 5 new positions, which will retain only those salaries that are paid, by the way, to members of parliament. That is where this country is going to bleed, so that we are not going to be able to fund these 5 positions, and we will increase our wage bill.
But James,
let us face it up, Bakar, yeah?
James, what guarantee is there? What guarantee is there that the creation of these positions will, as you say, heal the nation?
There is no guarantee on anything, Bakar. Even this current constitution, when it was passed in 2010, it did not come with 100% guarantee that it will work as it is expected. What happens is that it is given to human reason that should we design a system that seems to take care of some of the problems that this country has been facing, that there is a possibility we can cure those ills by designing a constitution of this nature. How? You know that, for instance, the president of this country wins the election, and Caleb knows, by 50% plus a very small margin over and above it. The person who loses in first runners-up loses with about 48-49%, which means that they are occupying just about half of the voting bloc of this country. And the nature of this election is that once this happens, the person who loses claims that they are not going to accept the election. So how is this particular proposal on expanding the executive going to work? The way it's going to cure the problem we have is as follows. First, the president, of course, will appoint a prime minister from within parliament. And this prime minister is going to be the leader of the party with a majority of the votes in parliament, 2 deputy prime ministers, and then a deputy president or vice president. What this does is that it spreads the top 7 seats of this country through a number of ethnic tribes of this country, which makes a lot of Kenyans feel like they are represented at the top tier executive. Because for Kenyans, and these are the proposals that came through BBI, for Kenyans, they feel that they are only in government when their person is actually in the executive. The other thing, Abakar, is that right now, Kenyans are saying these technocrats that you appoint as cabinet secretaries are people that we have absolutely no connection with, and they don't even try to reach out to us.
But James, you talk of Kenyans feeling as though they are in power. Isn't that not self-defeatist to hold as an argument? If in 2010, with the promulgation of a constitution that gave birth to the devolved system of governance, power was devolved, each community or so of the larger Kenyan population had someone on the table. They still do have someone on the table.
And therein Abakar lies the problem. Now, when you look at Kenyans, the way they have voted from 2013 to 2017, every time we get out of the election, they don't care about the governors they elected to the county governments. They normally want to ask themselves who is sitting in the national executive. And you see presidential elections have been dividing this country right in the middle. It creates so much tension that, for instance, had it not been for the handshake in March of 2018, this country would be probably hurtling down towards the precipice. So what are we saying? We have looked at the operations of this presidential system, and in the 10 years, we can see for sure that it's not going to give us the political stability we need as a nation. And so, let us not listen to folks who have identified the presidential system as having extreme power, and because they know they have made plans to, of course, take over power, they want to take over power as it is, okay? Now, the reason why you have a lot of people opposing this proposal to expand the executive, and I can understand, is because some feel that if this expanded executive were to come to this to the structure of government, then most likely they will not enjoy the immense powers which are enjoyed by the presidency as it is. So this is the reason why they are fighting it. It is not. It has nothing to do with the economic situation of this country. It has nothing to do with anything else, Abaka.
Fair enough. Let me get to Herman. Herman, the creation of the office of a premier, the official opposition leader, and cabinet secretaries drawn from who will be known as cabinet ministers, and a prime minister who is appointed by the president. This is painted as though it will be a silver bullet to the perennial post-election skirmishes in this country. Will it be?
I doubt that by merely creating the leader of the opposition and drawing ministers from parliament, you would have dealt with the problems that affect us after elections. But allow me, first of all, there is this talk in town that the expanded executive is a bad thing. I want to remind people that at the center of the struggle for the second liberation were two key things: multipartyism, and after that, the struggle continued, and the second thing was a new constitution. At the center of that new constitution was the demand for the diffusion of power. One, through regionalism, now is settled for counties, and the two, through the creation of the office of the prime minister. No process was more consultative than the process that ended up at Bomas, that produced the famous Bomas draft. In that draft, the position of prime minister was prominently there. It was then mishandled at Naivasha, and the rest is history. And therefore, you cannot fault this idea of coming up with a prime minister and a president and so on and so forth, because this is actually what Kenyans want. What Caleb and the others can fault is the architecture, the design. You could have a problem with the way it has been designed and have questions about it. But to question the fact that Kenyans wanted a prime minister, a president, and those others, you are being dishonest, outright.
All right, and
now,
let me.
The creation of the office of the official opposition. Yes.
Go ahead, Herman.
Yes. Okay. Yes. We had that office before, first occupied, I think, by Matiba and Shikuku, and later, I think, by Jaramogi or Mwai Kibaki and stuff like that. It was there until then it was removed, and now it's being brought back. If it was one such as we had before, it would not have much impact. And I don't want to be like those criticizing the creation of a prime minister. I want to say, I would wish to see an opposition leader in parliament who enjoys certain privileges and powers, which I'm not quite seeing there. Of course, it will be bad, like James has argued, that somebody comes in second and then you tell him to take a walk and go home. after getting maybe 40% or 46%. In our African context, that is a little difficult. So if you involve
Haman, let me interject you at that.
The affairs of the state by them occupying that office.
Haman, you talk of in our African you talk of in our African context and say that is bad. Is it not the hallmark of democracy that you go to elections, the one with the majority, even as per our constitution, becomes the president?
It's true, but I'm saying you cannot come up with a set of laws or a constitution without looking at the context, without looking at where that constitution is going to be operationalized, and looking at the people. And I'm saying we have had this arrangement from 2013 where the loser in a presidential election is asked to go home. Any arrangement through BBI that recognizes that somebody who has garnered 6 million votes, just 2 million or so less than the victor, surely is a person who would still need around. And any arrangement that then gives him some relevance and a role to play in the affairs of the country is welcome, and it can help out here and there. But it may not be the panacea problems. We need to do a little more engineering. Allow me not to go into the idea of Kenyans being lazy when they are drafting documents. All
right, Haman. Caleb, you want to respond to that?
Yes, I want to respond to that, and I'm saying this, Abu Bakr. It's very sad when I listen to James. When I look at him, I've never met him before. He is not that old. I believe he's a young man. It's sad when you hear somebody trying to justify that now, if you want to be recognized and you want to be listened to in this country, cause violence, and then you will be called to the negotiating table, and your violence, depending on how much violence you have caused, you will be rewarded. We are actually saying that it was okay for ODM to dispute the 2013 and 2017 presidential election results and cause chaos. Hence now we have had a handshake which is going to sort out the chaos. And what he has not told us, by creating these positions, how have we sorted out this real issue, which is a contender going into a presidential election with this mindset that he is going to win, and if he is not announced as the winner, he has been rigged out. That has not been sorted out in this. So what will prevent the perennial loser in the election in Kenya, presidential election, from, even if we sugarcoat this and have all these positions created, what happens when he becomes a runner-up? Will he be content with the position of a leader of opposition and with all the goodies that is being packaged with? So let's stop being packaged with it. Let us stop lying to Kenyans. What we need, and it will not cost us anything, it will not cost us 14 billion, is attitude change from leaders. Those, especially those who are running for presidential office. Let the ODM brigade accept that in every contest there will be a winner, there will be a loser. Let them accept that IEBC is the referee and their job is not to vote, their job is not to create votes for anybody, their job is to announce the will of Kenyans at the ballot and say so and so and on. So that is where we need to go.
Caleb, if expanding this executive will mean more representation at the national level, will it not be ideal to have it?
You see, Abu Bakr, we have over 40, I think 43 or 44 tribes now in Kenya. We are creating 5 positions for the 5 top tribes. It is sad that now we are having a conversation of tribes in the 21st century. We should not, and I can assure you, I can tell you, without those top 5 positions, I can tell you which top 5 communities are going to occupy them. My community, the Kalenjin, is one of them. But is that the right way to go? What do we do with the other 39 or 38 tribes that will not be accommodated here? So we need to change our attitude. It's the easiest thing. Let us go into a contest knowing there will be a winner, there will be a loser. I agree that the runner-up should not just be wished away and go home and stay there. If you have become runner-up, take up the role of being the leader of opposition and have your shadow cabinet, and of course create the checks and balances that are required, which of now we don't have them because the opposition has joined government. And they are busy trying to push those of us who are in government and have independent minds to be in the oppositions, which we cannot play that role because we won the election. And that is the dishonesty that we have within our leadership. That is what we need to cure. We do not need to spend 14 billion to cure that. We just need an attitude change, an overnight sleep, and reflect on our actions and reactions to matters, and we shall move forward.
And let me paraphrase that and pose it as a question to James. James Caleb says, don't spend 14 billion shillings. There is no need to that. Change and work on changing the attitude.
Yes. But let me tell you, Abubakar, and I am happy that Caleb notices that I am a young man, and I want to speak as a young man of this republic. But you know, the problem with the leadership of this country is that leaders like Caleb are always speaking from two sides of their mouth. Abubakar, it's only a few months ago that I heard His Excellency, the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, saying that there are efforts by people he calls deep states to ensure he doesn't win the election. There are efforts being made to deny him victory of the presidential election in 2022, so on and so forth. Abubakar, when you hear a leader of the stature of the Deputy President saying those things, what exactly comes to your mind? It tells you that this gentleman and his team are preparing not to accept the election or to accept the results of the election, okay? So let us not lie to one another here. There is a presidentialist system that we have borrowed from the United States. We have implemented it for 10 years. In these 10 years, Kenyans have gone to the streets twice, some of them shot for saying that they do not accept the results of the election. The two most serious contenders in those two elections, leading their parties, have come together and said, can we relook at the issues bedeviling the electoral system of this country? Are we able to do something to change the situation so that our elections and the results thereafter can be more palatable to Kenyans? And they have suggested a number of proposals that have come through Kenyans. Now, let me say something that is extremely important. As the BBI steering committee was going around the country, Kenyans gave their views. That report came and it was given back to Kenyans again through a validation process. The Deputy President and his friends like Caleb Kositani sat still and they kept campaigning out there for the presidency, and they did not want to make any suggestions or proposals to that committee. Now, after that process has moved to that level, they are now suggesting we want to go consensus. Let me tell you how a democracy works.
James, before you tell me how a democracy works.
Abubakar, you keep cutting me short. I don't know. I need. Let me make this point first, then we can go to the next one.
All right, James, I'll allow you to make your point, and to be fair, I'm cutting everyone short so that we stick to the topic of discussion. The question we are talking of...
Allow me 30 seconds to say this.
Okay, go ahead.
That a democracy is a place where you will expect to get some people saying no to something that has been proposed. But a democracy is a place where if something is proposed, like the BBI proposals that have come to us, if they are proposed and they are taken to the people and the people pass them, then the minority must accept what the majority has passed.
All right.
Secondly, yes.
All right, James. And now
secondly, and last, I don't want to eat too much of your time. As my friend Caleb says, these proposals have been reduced into administrative, policy, legislative, and constitutional proposals, and I don't see why anybody is rushing into making noise about it. When the proposals come through, those administrative ones, policy ones will be taken through the normal process. The legislative ones will be taken to Caleb and his friends in parliament to pass. And then the constitutional ones that they can pass in parliament will be passed. But those ones that require to come to us in a referendum will come to a referendum. It's not everything that is coming to a referendum.
And James, now that you have classified what democracy is, One would even suppose then that democracy also is accepting the results of an election where you did not emerge a winner.
Yes. One of the things that we need to do in a democracy is to accept an election when you have lost. Okay?
Fair enough.
But you see, Caleb and his party know very well that one of the issues that the other side has kept raising is that the election was not done in accordance with the constitution and the law. In fact, Bakar, you know that last time the election was even nullified by the Supreme Court. So under those circumstances, when an election is so hotly contested as such, and the people go away so angry and so annoyed, some of them are probably not wanting even to see their friends from the other side and so on. What do? Does the president and Raila Odinga need to sit down and wait until something like that happens again, or should they bring something to the table that can address it?
Fair enough. And before I get to Haman, as always, remember your voice matters, your opinion counts. Keep talking to us. The hashtag to use is Pundits Night. Let me go through some of your feedback on 22047. Someone says, I'm Rev Luka Matoili from Theregea sub-county, watching with my family. All right. Kenyans and full, stop milking the country in the name of cohesion. Implement the first constitution fully so that we identify weak areas, says someone else. Milton from Lurambi sub-county says, remind Manyora losing an election starts from the ward level. Gakuru from Kinangop says, the second handshake gentlemen are ones who create the rift. The exist from politics will give us peace, he says. Someone else says, good evening, I'm John. This BBI issue started long time ago, by then known as MOU. Since then, life has not lost. I suppose he means something else, but keep talking to us. The hashtag to use is Pundits Night. Send us a message as well on 22047. Let me get to Haman. And still on the question of expanding the executive so that we move from this, Haman. Caleb talked about the attitude after elections and election in the country. If then there is a feeling that these are creation of offices for individuals, and this could be a wrong or a right feeling, how best then can this BBI document, can the proponents of this initiative deal with the attitude that Caleb talks about?
Yes, in the process of answering that, I want to really plead with Caleb, and he speaks for many people and with many people, to purge from their political diction or vocabulary 2 words. One is phrases, perennial loser, and 2, attitude to mean people should accept defeat. I really want to plead because I think we are in the process of talking to each other as a country to sort out our problem. That's how I understand BBI and the handshake. Look here, there's nothing like perennial loser. Uhuru lost 2002, he became president later. Kibaki lost twice, he became president the 3rd time. The best example globally is Abraham Lincoln, who turned out to be one of the best presidents the world has ever seen, not just America. He lost several times, even for Congress, and he later became president. And the question of attitude to mean the loser, we want to cure that, hopefully through the BBI. Because I'm sure Caleb may be young, but he was not a kid in 2007. At the KICC, where there was a national tally for the presidential election in 2007, 2 people stood out. On the side of ODM was William Samoei Ruto. On the side of PNU, only one man was standing, and she stood out, Mother Karua. Nobody can forget those 2 people. You could see the heart in William Ruto. You could see how he felt. That's the time Kenyans saw how eloquent and forceful William Ruto could be. Because of the messed elections. So let's walk out, let's leave that out. Let's sort out our problems, Caleb, in such a way When you win, you smile. The loser puts on a smile. We know it's not quite a smile. Extend their hand to you and they concede, like civilized people do. But let's work towards it. We were in court, in the Supreme Court. Raila won 2013, we saw. Raila 2 in 2017, we saw. 2007, we saw. Things have been said, things have been written, commissions have come out with reports, Kriegel and the rest. So let's not talk about perennial losers. Let's not talk about accepting defeat. Let's talk about hygiene in our politics. Let's work out in such a way that the loser will lose fairly. And I think this is what BBI is about. So we cannot talk about attitude to mean that those who are defeated go home. It must first and foremost, Caleb, my friend, mean that we are going to ensure, and I wish you are criticizing BBI for not doing so much. I don't even see it myself. Caleb should be asking, and rightly so, what is it? What is in this document that will help us sort out the issue of the wrong winner? I mean, somebody not winning. I mean, somebody winning fairly.
There's nothing, Professor.
All right, go ahead, Caleb. You say there's nothing in this document?
There's nothing in this document that guarantees that there will be no dispute in the presidential election results. But let me say also to James that he was speaking of the 2017 elections. We can no longer discuss the first round of elections in 2017 because that was nullified. That is no longer an issue to be discussed. We had a repeat election.
But it was nullified because of irregularities.
Yes, it was nullified because of irregularities, and the court decided. They never ruled on any penalties. They never said so and so is responsible. So that matter is dead. We had a repeat election that was boycotted by ODM. So in 2017, Jubilee won outright. Abu Bakr, Jubilee has majority of members of parliament. We have majority of members of the county assemblies. We have majority in the council, in the Senate. We have majority in the council of governors. We have majority in the women reps. So how did Jubilee lose this election? So really, that matter should be there. Professor Manyora, the word, when I use perennial loser, I know what I'm saying, and I'm not that poor in English, my good friend, Professor. It is a fact that Raila Odinga has lost in so many elections, and he has never accepted defeat in all of them. And we would like that in this BBI document, and it's good he asked that question, whether we have anything that will sort out issues. We need to have a place whereby presidential candidates pen on a piece of paper that they will accept election results, and if they do not accept, they will use the legal processes. They will not call people to come out to the streets and demonstrate, whereby we will now have confrontation with police and have deaths. And also, Abu Bakr and fellow Kenyans, we need also to have in this BBI document a clause whereby if I have served my 2 terms in leadership as the President of the Republic, and I champion the change of the Constitution, we need to have a guarantee that once you have served your 2 terms, even if we change the Constitution, you are not eligible to run again, so that we stop being suspicious of anybody who is serving his 2nd term driving a change of the Constitution. People start thinking, oh, maybe President Uhuru doesn't want to go home. He has said he's going to go home at the end of his term. But we need to have that now enacted in our Constitution. And those are the proposals that we want to have in this document before it is passed. Because it's very dangerous to pass this document the way it is. The amount of hidden cards that are there that are going to emerge once you have passed it, and then people say, you'll be told, hey, you passed it. It is now part of law, and this is how it's going to be. So I think we really need to look into this document deeper. We are all Kenyans. We are not about to go anywhere. We are not in a hurry. I don't know why there's so much urgency to pass this document. Let us first sort out our economic problems. We have issues that COVID has really ravaged our economy. We have people who are suffering. We have people who are sleeping hungry.
Okay.
They can't pay rent. Let us sort out those issues first before we go embark on a very expensive
Fair enough. And you say there is suspicion that someone could be seeking a third term or an extra term. Does that extend to the presidency level?
Yes, well, there's only one person who has done, who has presidential term limits and also governors.
And where is that suspicion coming from?
It is all over. It's a talk. People are saying, why is it silent? Why is it quiet about that? And that's why I'm saying we need to have in this BBI a clause whereby if you have served your 2 terms and the constitution is changed, you do not run. And this should apply for posterity. I'm not saying this for now. It should apply for posterity so that we can have laws that will protect Kenyans going forward. And also, Abu Bakr, let us look at the reforms that we have gained. These proposals in BBI take us back. We are being told now that the Chief Justice, who is the President of the Judiciary, we shall the Minister for Justice, let's say, for example, or the President, will appoint an ombudsman who will now oversee the issues of the judiciary. Yet we have the Judicial Service Commission, which is independent of the judiciary. It seems that we are trying to take control of the judicial processes again. We have the police, independent police. So that's why the inspector, we changed the name from the Kenya Police to the inspector, and we have now the Inspector General of Police, who is there, and is meant to act independently. Now we are saying the minister will appoint a commission that will now be overseeing the police. That we're going back to the days whereby the police will be given instructions from other quarters. So we want to have the police act independently. We need to enhance the independence of the judiciary, and we need also to safeguard
Fair enough, and you are poking holes at the recommendations of the steering committee that wrote that report based on what they said was, of course, feedback and consultations with and from Kenyans. You have a right to do that. I want us to move from that and get to a question that James earlier on hinted at, preempting, which is the question of the deep state. And I ask this, and I want to ask James this question, that first, when the DP, for instance, says that we are ready and waiting for that deep state and the system that they are talking about, we will go heads on, we have nothing to fear. First, is the deep state a far-fetched idea, as some say, or a reality that exists?
Bakar, the best placed person to answer that question is, of course, His Excellency the Deputy President, Honorable William Ruto. If the second most powerful man in the country is not deep state, then I don't know who deep state is. But let me say as follows. This statement that encompasses a shadowy organization called deep state is a reference that has been made by the Deputy President and his side, I think, in preparation for 2022, because they are preparing to not accept the election and the result thereon when the election is done in 2022.
James, that is inaccurate. So, that is inaccurate. He has not publicly said he will not accept. You can't say that on a national television. That's what you are supposing.
That is my deduction, Bakar. The reason why the Deputy President keeps talking about those kind of things is because he wants to set up ground for purposes of rejecting the election results in 2022. And I am not going to move an inch from that standing unless I am given something extremely serious to the contrary. Now, there is no way that a sitting Deputy President of the country can be saying that there is an organization other than the government that he serves is going to prevent him from taking over power unless he knows something that Kenyans don't know. He needs probably to explain to us a little bit more so that we also come on board. But from where we stand, seeing how he has been conducting himself, we can only determine by deduction that this man is setting a stage to get an excuse not to accept the result in 2022 Much to the contrary to what my friend Caleb Kositani is saying.
But James, if he is someone, and I say someone who has interest in the 2022 politics of the country, of wanting to be, as some say, the president, then these are concerns you will agree, is raising, whether they are lies or truth.
And I want to ask you, Abubakar, have you ever seen these people called deep state yourself? Do Kenyans know about the deep state? So at the level of deputy president, probably the deputy president sits in a vantage position from where he is able to see these people, and some of us can't. So this is why we are saying, as Kenyans, we cannot determine the existence or otherwise of these people, but if the deputy president is able to see them, why then can't he name them and shame them so that all Kenyans know?
All right.
Otherwise, let us not fall for a trap in which someone begins to create a problem so that he uses this problem he himself has created as a reason not to accept the election results in 2022.
All right.
This comes in many ways, and I see this as being one of those ways he is setting a stage not to accept that result.
All right, Haman, deep state, if at all it exists, how deep is it? If at all it exists, I'm asking.
I think we can agree on there being a deep state. What we can debate is the definition of what it is. What we can debate is who is deep state in the various places and fitting within our definitions. What we may perhaps debate over is what it does, in which manner, and what are the drivers. But in one way or another, in one form or the other, there exists some informal powerhouses across the world, across countries. People who somehow tend to have more influence than really official colors would give them. So they may be within government, like we have said before repeatedly here. They may be outside government. They may be completely independent of those in government, but controlling those in government. They may be outside and working with some sections of government, but they are always there, and they have tremendous influence. And that explains why you have said, and James has alluded to that, that the deputy president will be a little nervous. One, because he must know something we don't know. But two, if we can see the indicators that indeed there is the possibility of the so-called deep state standing in his way, surely he must be worried. And he must only be worried, he can only be worried if the deep state not only exists, but is deep enough to scare somebody made of steel like William Samoei Ruto. So there will be people like those. They will be powerful. We've read about them in other countries. We don't have time for that here. And they have a lot of influence. So the question I might be asking my friend Caleb to engage is, would they have what it takes to face the deep state? Or it will just be talking?
All right, Herman,
I suspect we are going to yes, okay.
All right, and as we conclude the discussion, because of the interest of time, Caleb, first of all, is there a concern from your political end and divide, and this in reference to you being a lead ally of the Deputy President William Ruto, that there is something called deep state?
Well, Abubakar, I have said before, the deep state does exist.
It does?
It does exist. And you can see from the way the good professor is speaking, he knows of their existence. But I want to tell him that we know of the existence of the deep state. We are not scared of them. When Deputy President, His Excellency Dr. William Samoei Ruto spoke about them, we were just notifying them that we know you exist, we know your plans, and we shall overcome. So we are really not scared of that deep state.
And given that he is the second in command, is he part of it?
And given that he's the second in command, deep state are not people who go out there and seek elective positions, Abubakar. Deep state are people who sit behind the scenes, like the men operating the cameras here and all. They are never seen in the show, but they are doing a very serious job there. And those deep state people will always adapt from those who have already been elected. So anybody who is seeking elective posts, even those deep state fellows, once William Ruto wins, they will be the ones trying to tell him, boss, we were also trying to do our ABCD. Now can you adopt us and we work together? So really, we have no fear, because we know that with God and the people, we will get things done. I think, Abubakar, before you end the show, it would be very important for us to clarify and say that let us respect independent institutions. IEBC has a body, is one of the independent commissions that we have in this country. And we should let IEBC do their work. They have given their projected budget for the referendum, 13.9 billion. And that has been disputed by Raila Odinga, who is talking of we can spend 2 billion. Maybe we'll spend 2 billion if we build a consensus. Once we build a consensus, we'll not even need to go for a vote. We'll go maybe for acclamation in rallies, and whereby the Deputy President, His Excellency the President, and Raila Odinga in one, and say tumekubali, and that is the end of the story. And that is the route we want to take, so that we can save this country from divisive politics and divisive engagement before another divisive political climate comes in 2022. We actually need to respect the fact that IEBC does not spend money the way they wish. They provide a budget, itemized budget, for every single item that they will use in the referendum. Vehicles alone, if I was trying to look at the previous budget in Parliament, the hire of vehicles alone plus choppers and all to carry ballot papers was to the tune of about 4 billion.
And you raise questions on the 13.9 billion.
So when you raise questions on 13.9 billion, it's not just for creating. And you know, Abubakar, IEBC cannot project and say, okay, instead of printing 19.2 million ballot papers, because maybe 10 million people will turn up, let us print 10 million ballot papers. The law does not allow them. They must print the ballot papers according to the voters register. And so those costs are there, and they're real. And there are costs which will come to Parliament. We shall sit, we shall approve, and item by item. And so that cost is actually a figure that is verifiable. So let us allow IBC to do its work.
Fair enough. And you say that despite the Parliamentary Accounts Committee chairperson saying if there is a budget that will be put on his desk, he will approve that. He said earlier on in a press conference. Nonetheless, keep talking to us.
The chairman budget cannot approve it without the floor. That is a lie. That's another lie from.
Keep talking to us. The hashtag to use is Pundits Night. Sarah Ibrahim on Twitter says, if we spread all over the country, barring the dragons of tribalism and religious discrimination, we will go far. Foreign investors, she says, will flood here. If some MPs and senators are just in Parliament to make money, then where are we heading to, she asks. Sikai Muda Mrefu, someone on Twitter by that name, says, it's uniting the two main proponents. The rest of the country remain and continue to be terribly divided as it was shortly after we got our independence. In quote, he asks, whatever that means. Michael Khimuk says, as usual, Herman Manyora's famous quote tonight should be that Ruto should do the honorable thing and resign. He has not uttered that tonight. Lian Meritin says, waiting to hear wise words from Prof. All right. Still on Twitter, Rono Mac Shadrach at Mac Rono says on Twitter, my concern is that we cannot give views anymore on this BBI, and that's why when I want to have these goodies on the BBI, I cannot have it without the toxic bit of it, he asks. Someone else says, TV47 to create those 5 posts in the executive will make everyone feel represented is a lie. Out of 42 ethnic communities in Kenya, it only serves to satisfy the big 5. Someone else on Twitter, Mugo Hiram, says, if the coalition wins majority in parliament, it will proceed to fill those vacancies. Explain how it will happen. Well, that's where we'll have to end tonight's edition of Pundits Night. On behalf of the entire team that made this production possible. Bye for now. And lastly, thanks to our guests tonight, to Caleb Kostani, lawmaker, Herman Manyora, our resident analyst, and James Mamboleo, constitutional lawyer. Good night and God bless.